Nobody's home, so my internet should stay up tonight. Everybody's gone. I got one leader and one at a basketball game, and the other older ones, who knows where they're at. So we should be good. Okay. So we got a little bit to talk about at-will employment, you know, the exceptions and such that goes on in there. First off, we're supposed to talk a little bit about see if we understand what at-will employment is, or if there's what the exceptions are to that. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Anything they learned from the readings? What at-will employment really is?
Well, the only thing that I kind of understood that if you're either non-exempt or exempt, and if you're non-exempt, then you're pretty much at will. If you're exempt, then a lot of things. But there's also the contract part of it. So if you're the contract in place, so that goes along with that. Well, exempt and non-exempt type stuff, because you sign a contract when you're an exempt employee. And that
okay.
has yourself into it.
I missed that, and I don't know that that's accurate, because we have exempt and non-exempt, and I don't think we have any contracts related to that. Maybe there was a reading I was supposed to read that I didn't get, but
or maybe I'm combining readings. I'm tired.
It seems to me that at will is something that is very old, and it's kind of adapted over time. And although at will basically means that the company can let you go when they want, and you can leave the company when you want, without giving reason or notice, really either direction. As of late, there are a lot of things that could be construed as a contract of employment, such as promotions and good job ratings, and people telling you things like, you know, as long as you keep doing a good job, your job is steady here, and things like that. And so companies really need to be more careful and have good reasons for dismissing people, and not just let them go because it's at will.
Yeah, and Christina, I think you were talking about the salary, the exempt and non-exempt. That's part of the.
I combined the two. I was looking at this. It's the breach of the implied contract, the breach of an implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing, and the violation of a public policy. Those were what I was. Yes, my brain is a little fried tonight. I'm sorry.
You know, and something I've done the last 2 weeks is I've sat down and done yearly evaluations with all my store managers. And when we go over their salary, or over their wage, they are salaried, and they fall under, in the way my guys are paid and my gals, they're paid under a minimum base pay, which is $2,000 a month or $24,000 a year. And then they're paid off of a pay plan on the volumes of the stores. With that, there's no real binding contract. But on a yearly basis, we review this, and they sign that they understand what they're getting paid. In my best judgment, from what we've read, that would almost be a contract, because it's for a year. So, you know, it would be harder for me to fire them if they did good on their reviews, and you know, they had opportunities to, you know, promote or whatever. They'd really have to mess up for me to get rid of them, under what I read in this particular reading this week, anyways.
And I think that something I read was talking about, you know, when maybe it was the instructor, Sister Jeff's, in her video, when people are salaried in some company, they would still quote their salary in an hourly rate, because rather than saying this is your salary for a year, because basically saying that would almost be an implied contract that they're going to make that much money that year, whether they work there, whether they're let go before that or not.
Yeah, that was part of her IHC example with the healthcare company, where, you know, those guys that come in, like she may said, $36 an hour, and mine are done on an hourly basis when you figure that out. So it's kind of, so I guess somebody's done their due diligence to kind of come in line with that. So anyways, okay. Any other thoughts on the at-will or any other, you know, exceptions on there? I'm only supposed to spend a couple minutes on this. So obviously we can't just fire him because, you know, at the at-will side, because of gender, religion, origin, disabilities acts, there's a lot of other things in there to protect them. But when it boils down to it, as a company, you have to do your due diligence just to, even if you wanted to term them at will, you would have to battle pretty hard with unemployment courts.
Yeah. I don't think you can pull the, oh, it's employment at will card. I think it's a very loose card to pull.
I have yet to win one like that where I've even come close to doing that because I've been directed that way. I end up with the unemployment lawyers or the judges, and it doesn't turn out very well for the company, at least that what I've dealt with on a personal basis.
And
So,
I think, like, even if you want to live by that, if you document everything, it's going to prove to be a little bit more valuable.
a lot of
Especially if
documentation.
they're like bad performing employees, because even though you do have the employment at will, and let's say you decide to be, I don't know, prejudiced, and so you do fire them because of their cultural clothing or whatever. But they're also bad employees. That record of not the prejudice is going to protect you a lot more, unfortunately. I don't think you should be protected, but whatever.
I was thinking, go ahead, keep going.
No, go ahead.
I was just funny. I was just thinking, you know, I always worry sometimes because we're driven off of metrics of volume so much and profitability. But if I look back on me, you know, I get a little worried about maybe this year isn't as strong as the other years and they can get after me, and who knows what could happen under my particular position. But if you go back and look at my evaluations for the past, I'm sad to say 20 plus years, there's not hardly one of them that has any mark in them whatsoever. They're all pretty good ones. So I feel protected somewhat off of what I've been reading. So that's good.
We had an at-will firing at our school just recently where they took a para who they had hired. She'd been there for several years, and the new principal and her didn't get along, and the principal fired her.
Really?
Didn't give her a reason, didn't give nothing. I mean, it was called, she walked into her office, well, asked her to come to her office. She went into the office, she walked out, she was fired, and that was the end of it. She didn't come back, so.
Well, they'll have an interesting part that in the, well, is it a teachers union in that particular one where they have that protection? Or just
I don't know,
all
because she was a para, I don't believe she was in the teachers union.
Okay. So she wasn't protected as much.
As much, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that's good on that, Will. Let's move on to Terry and to Phil and talk a little bit about these two team members inside this particular company, and what, I forget what's the gal's name who's the manager, the 27-year-old, the youngest. I guess it doesn't really matter what her name is. So what do you I mean, how's she supposed to approach this and do something with Terry or Phil? I guess maybe a little background on each of them might not hurt, if anybody remembers.
Sure, I'll take one. Terry basically was a scuba diving instructor to a lot of the executives at the company, and they were friends and they hung out a lot, and the executives decided to bring Terry in for an interview, and even though he didn't pass any of the hiring board, they hired him in anyway, and the guy's not performing worth a hoot because he doesn't know jack, and he's been getting ratings of 3.5, which is I guess middle of the road, like he's proficient at doing his job. And this person, whoever's the evaluator, and I believe it's a she, if I understood right in my reading, she knows this person's not worth it. She's ready to give him a 2.5, which she does, and then she starts getting all kinds of pressure from the executives who review that before it actually happens, and she's feeling lots of pressure about it. But she knows that this person's really not worthy of a 3.0.
Yeah. Just, Terry's just not bringing anything to the table to help him out
Right.
at all. Okay, any highlights on Phil, Michael or Christina?
I'm reading through it now.
Well, I was gonna say Phil, like he had been working for them for 6 years, and they had a policy in place that if you don't get promoted after 3, you get fired. He was also right about the time when they were looking at the reviews and everything, it came out that he had the cancer or something. Something went wrong, and he was sick.
I'm pretty sure it's cancer.
I think it was cancer, and so he took a leave and whatnot, and then came back after that point. People even went so far as to go to his house and work on his garden and things like that. So,
He was well liked.
Yes, I mean, people seem to like him. He's
by the CEO.
Yeah,
except for the boss.
Yeah, which I don't. And it says that maybe he went against him one too many times, and so, or challenged him inappropriately one too many times. So
very outspoken.
Very
not necessarily politically correct in his statements or Facebook or social media and stuff like that. Okay, so the manager, she's got these 2 guys that are struggling a lot. She doesn't think Terry should be around. She wants to grade him down and move on. This other guy with Phil, she doesn't know what to do. Get sick and other things like that. What do you think? What are the obligations? We're going to talk about three things here. What are the financial obligations that these guys? What do these guys do to the bottom line? Are they a hindrance or do they help it out?
Terry doesn't help at all.
No. Phil's at least providing.
At least attempting and putting some help.
Yeah.
And they made it sound like that they could rearrange duties and pull certain things from other people so they could be more productive, and he would be able to have a full one person's responsibility.
Phil
with the things he could do.
On Phil in a different department, right? If I remember right.
I didn't see it as a different department. I was thinking it was they could pull some of the, let's say, administrative tasks from the other people, pile them all together, and give them to Phil, and he'd be able to have a full person's worth of responsibilities, and then the other people could, be better because they're not having to do those more menial tasks or something, is the way I understood it.
Well, it said that they tried it though with him, and then it says that it just didn't actually work out. Like they tried to pull these things and have him do, because his background, his company was acquired from another. Well, his was an acquiration, so they didn't want to fire him because he was acquired through another company. And then when they tried to shuffle things around, it says that he wasn't a complete disaster like Terry, but more like a fading away, not very productive person. So she was hoping there was some hope for him, but he wasn't, and she didn't think he was completely hopeless like Terry, but yet at the same time, he really just wasn't able to put a whole lot because this team was so technical and he didn't have that technical background.
Because he was like 40.
Well, and he just had come from he had come from a call center manager versus being on the technical side. So he got thrown into their group, which wasn't really the best placement for him.
Yeah, he just didn't know he just was totally out of his element. So obviously both of them were being a significant financial drain on the company because they weren't able to be productive like they should to pay for themselves in a sense. Is there any legal obligations that the company has to keep these 2 working for them, as far as what we learned about at will or the exceptions with the at will?
I will say that I believe that at least in the case of Terry, they would be at risk if they just cut him loose right now, because he's had good ratings up to now, and there's no documentation where he's not been pulling his own weight. And so I would say that there is some risk there. And I think in the case of Phil. There could also be some perceived, I don't know, retaliation for having been off work. I think that probably in both cases, they need to do some things before letting either one of them go, just because their stuff is not in order. And I know that sounds maybe kind of manipulative from a management standpoint, but clearly in the case of Terry, his company records don't show him to be a non-performer. And in the case of Phil, like I said, it was it's almost, you know, we've got a guy that's on some, I'll say, PIP type stuff, but he's got a situation where he has a child, and so they have FMLA mixed in with it. So it's kind of messy too. When anybody gets injured or gets off work, it makes things difficult even in an at-will state.
You're very correct. They've left themselves open through a couple different things. And I don't know that Phil's necessarily open, but just because of the situation that they're at specifically with him, it'd be very tough to do something without having some repercussions from, you know, any type of unemployment court or things like that. Okay, any other thoughts on that? That's pretty solid right there on that assessment.
No, I think to fire Terry, he'd have to go through PIP first.
Correct.
They couldn't treat him specially, like, just because I think it says, I can't remember exactly, but it says like it's very rare for someone to not go through performance. And so if they fired him without doing that, that'd be really kind of sketchy.
You know, but as I read it though, I didn't get the feeling that it was all that rare. That
I couldn't remember. Maybe I'm making it up.
No, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying, I mean, I just read it literally an hour ago, and I remembered it thinking that their processes were not very hard set. They were not clear, like you always go through a PIP, because
Right.
they said in some cases people just got fired, but in some cases they went through a PIP, and that's maybe I have poor reading comprehension, but that was my impression.
And the company very well may have done both, if I remember right. But
So
again,
it
on
says
a legal,
it says the people that didn't receive the PIP first were usually the result of specific incident of gross insubordination.
Coordination.
So they did something really specific that was really bad.
they
Right.
took it to the top level. It just was done and over with.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
No,
did you guys think that their procedures were clearly set up or not?
I didn't think they were super set. I think they're more set up than some companies that I've been reading about or that I've worked with. I don't know, because it's so hard when you get into this point, because it's like you have exceptions to every policy that you make usually, but they don't define their exceptions. That's the problem.
Right.
And I think
And
that's where I
we
start getting vague or confused on.
You know, and we're a little lacking on information as well at the same time.
Absolutely.
Go ahead,
All right,
Christina.
I was just
Any-
going to say, and she's coming into this new position with kind of a different view than I think that the people before her had, because it talked about the one before her just trying to keep, knowing that management had brought Terry on, she was just keeping his stuff up because she didn't want to deal with, she knew it would come back on her if he failed, and she didn't want that, considering that he had been hired specifically because of the upper people. So she was kind of putting herself in a bad spot, so to speak.
And this gal has no patience for people that are behind the learning curve, that won't work 80 hours a week, that aren't all in completely, or, you know, understand what they're doing, that are prepared. So she just doesn't have any value for him to some extent. So, okay, just quickly, is there any ethical obligations that the company has towards these two, or to the employees that are, you know, to the company itself, to bottom line type thing, or to the employees that they work with as far as credibility?
Well, I was going to say, with their performance reviews every 6 months, I think that they kind of have to wait until that time frame to really make any decisions. And that's why she hadn't already done something, was because that was kind of the standard processing as you have your 6-month performance reviews or whatever. But then past that, I don't know that they're, I mean, unless they did something really drastic, that was the only reason I could see them taking a call before then.
I don't know their finances, but I think always just like kind of like how we expect 2-week notices from our employees. I feel like layoff notices. I've never heard of a layoff notice before. And when I did hear about it, I was like, dang, that's something that I really want to kind of employ. Not like a year like we were reading in the labor unions. But I think, you know, performance, so let's say they go off of a performance review and then saying, okay, in 2 months or in 3 months, you'll be fired. We're gonna give you these 3 months so you can find a job, so you can you know, get your finances in order and everything like that. But on this specific date, which is 3 months from now, that will be your last day, and that you will be escorted from the premises. And so I don't know. I think that's my personal opinion on a company. I think a company should give notice.
Yeah, in today's world, they almost have to, unless it's something egregious, I think, anyways. But I do think they have a little bit of, they need to tighten up what they're doing on their evaluations as far as the ethical side of it for the rest of their employees. If they're going to hold one accountable, they got to hold them all accountable, and they got to do it the same and be honest on these particular, you know, evaluations and such. I just think they have to be equitable from one team member to the next, that they're evenly graded, I guess is the right word. Okay, well, let's look at, we tried to jump a little bit into the company's HR practices. There's a couple questions in here, not a ton, just a couple I want to look at because they're pretty straightforward. Off of what we got out of the reading, what's their step in how they hire people? What's the steps that they take? What do they do? How do they go about it?
Well, it says that they normally have several people interview them, but if they don't make it through 3 of them, or so if they get 3 no's, then they're normally gone. But this time he got 5 no's and still got hired. So, I mean, it kind of broke their normal hiring basics of the rules that they had set.
So I think at the base level, they probably had some pretty good practices in place. They just didn't follow them at all with Terry because he was the CEO's buddy.
Yeah.
As far as I can get out of it anyways.
I would agree.
That's what I got.
So what did you guys learn about PIPs? Are they effective? What's the purpose? What is the real outcome design?
In this company,
Yeah.
the PIPs were basically a documentation process for somebody that's going to be fired.
Straight up.
It wasn't a PIP in the sense that a company hopes that the employee gets better.
So I've got somebody that's under, it's not really a PIP. He's on a 60-day verbal written warning. And I've given him specific things that he needs to do. I might have mentioned him before. Mm-hmm. And in the discussion with him, I'm like, are all these things doable? I want to know if you can, if you can do these things. And his answer was, well, maybe. And I'm like, no, you're not hearing me. This is a list of things that we need to come to an agreement in this meeting right here, right now, that you can do. If you can't do them, we need to change them. But if you can do them, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It's going to be a stretch for you to fix all this history. But if you can do them, then that's what I want. And he said, yeah, I can do it. And so I'm like, okay, sign the piece of paper, and I'll sign the piece of paper. And within a week, I went back and I'm like, okay, so have you done this? Oh, no, I haven't done that. Well, it says you're going to do this. You know, it's like, come on, dude. I'm trying to help you be successful, but you got to do something. So
And I think it's important that you didn't go to him being like, oh, you didn't do this. You asked, did you do this? So even though you might have assumed that he didn't do it, you didn't give him the perception that you assumed.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So then it still shows that you still have hope in them, that you're still looking forward to them meeting their goals and to them getting better. Whereas this PIP is just a, 801 fired.
Well, and I mean, we have PIPs, and I think that we use them very much the same way. In a PIP is maybe a little bit longer than a 60-day verbal written warning. But we'll find out early next week, if he's met some deadlines that were supposed to be done by the end of this month. And we may just say, okay, well, we're not progressing, so maybe we can just go to a 30-day notice, written notice, and here are specifically the things you got to do, or you're out of here, right? And I hate to do that, but when somebody doesn't bring to the table what they're supposed to do, it's what it is.
Yeah, I have something similar to a PIP that I use. I don't like to use them, but it's just sometimes a specific person takes you to that level where you have to do it. But on my manager specifically, it takes another step to a probationary type thing. When I hit a probation, I pretty much given up all hopes of this person ever turning it around. So it's very specific and it's very time driven. And if they don't make the changes, they're just done. But it gives them that fair warning. But they've also had those other opportunities to have a verbal warning, a written warning, and some other things. But when they reach that point, similar to this, the chances, I haven't had one yet come out of it over the past years that I've had to put on a probation. None of them have survived because they just haven't made the change. Whether Eric's team member will or not, it's hard to say. But they're a necessary thing that you have to have for some team members. But sometimes they work, but a lot of times they just don't.
So I think it's important that you have like the written first, or that you have the verbal warning first. Whereas with this, at least my understanding in the reading is that like they go from a performance review to like a PIP.
Right.
And there's like no middle ground, or there's no first step. It's either this or this.
Right. Well, the purpose of a performance improvement plan is you got a bad rating because something, right? And in our company, you don't get 2 bad ratings in a row without expecting to get a wave goodbye. And so you get a bad rating, and we have what we call a performance improvement plan, which is a plan for, okay, you're not cutting the mustard, you're short in these areas. Here are the things that you need to do to get up to what the expected level is. And we'll provide all these things. If you feel like these are necessary, we'll give you whatever help you need. But the associate, in our case, we call them associates, not employees, you have to show the drive. We're not going to hold your hand and say, okay, now write this down. Now write this down. It's here's how you can be successful, and we're going to meet periodically to go over this. And if we do this and we get to the next time and you have a bad rating, it's like, you know what, see ya. But the goal in all of our cases is to help the person become successful. We hired them for whatever reason. Yep. And I'll be perfectly honest, I have a guy that I hired, and it was a mistake. He was somebody before we hired him, and after he got hired, he changed.
That happened.
And it's still on me. To this day, I apologize every time I think about the fact that I pushed to hire this guy. I think we all have got one screw up. Anyway.
So do most of your people I just curiously, do you most of your people make it through the performance review then, or whatever it is, and improve, or do they end up being gone?
We have a very few that end up being gone.
Okay.
In my 20 something years, I've had to fire one person.
Wow.
One regular associate. We deal with a lot of contract contingent people, and it's, oh man, it's amazing what the people out in the market that, you know, don't come to work or come to work high or drunk or drive their car down a ski slope, you know, and now they're in jail and they can't come to work. Or, I mean, it's crazy. I don't know where all these people came from.
I've dealt with a few of those, you know, and Christina, on my side, when I'm in this side where I'm trying to help them, the majority of them do figure it out and they move on. And some of them have turned out to be outstanding employees over time. But once they reach that one critical point where you just have to take it to that last step, they just, in my experience, they don't make it. But through that first stage, the majority of them do. Because it's hard to go find another one. If you can invest a little time and get this one person to figure it out, it ends up being much more beneficial for the team member and for the company. So, anyways.
You know, as a group leader, I've had a lot of situations where I have people and they like burn all their sick and personal time and all their vacation time, and I can usually tell when somebody's gonna call in sick because I know that they just got some more sick time. I know that it's going to happen. I've had several people that I've had to talk to and say, look, you know, if you get the flu and you're, you know, running from both ends and you have no time, I can't help you. You know, you really need to manage your time and at least have some buffer. You know, it's amazing that adult people sometimes will do that. They just burn everything they got. And, you know, so dealing with inanimate objects is a lot easier than dealing with animate objects.
Yep. Okay. So with our manager, what do you think we're going to just kind of jump ahead to what you think she's going to do with Terry and with Phil. First of all, what do you think she's going to do with Terry? What are the alternatives? What could she do versus firing him or whatever? What do you think she can do with the guy?
Well, I'd put him on the 2.5 and then he would be on a PIP to see if he can make it work for the next period of time. And then after that, he'd be gone. So
how do you sell that to the executives that are breathing down
that's
your
my
neck?
worry.
That's a tough thing. You're right. I think she needs to do something like that. But how do you make it work?
Well, it would be a matter of her now. It would be a matter of her taking the time to sit down and record the things that are happening over that next 6-month period or whatever. She would have to be very diligent about the paperwork part of it and the data entry and stuff to make sure that she backs herself up with the things that are going on.
What do you think about Phil? He's been off, he's been sick, and now he's back.
I think she won't fire Phil. I think it'll be too much of a legal mess. For right now, at least.
Okay, so I'll kind of give you a brief synopsis of what happened. And I was jumping ahead when I was telling you about Phil moving to another department because that's what he ended up doing because he couldn't handle what he was doing. So they found a department where he could maybe do better in and make a difference. And it was something to do with international stuff. He was working with the French and German side of the company, dealing with that where he could do a little better. And he didn't really do a ton better. But they said the sad thing is his brain cancer came back and he died.
Oh,
long after they moved him. So that was a sad story with Phil. So she had that conversation with Phil and tried to find him another avenue. Like my manager right now that I'm about to put on a progressive disability on a probation, he's just finally realized that he can't do it anymore. And I'm finding him a position. I worked through the DC side, our distribution center, to where he can't handle managing a store, but he wants to go drive a truck. And the company will actually train him, send him off to class, and it's an avenue for him to stay with the company, keep his 20+ year tenure, all of his benefits, but do something different where he can manage it. And so kind of what she did with Phil, I'm trying to do with this guy, and I think it's going to be a win-win for everybody. Plus, give somebody else an opportunity to run a store. But Terry was a little different. She basically just ended up having a heart-to-heart with Terry and say, you know what, you're not making it. Things aren't going to work out. Woman to man, a man to man kind of conversation about what the real gist of it was after she gave him the little 2.5. And he just said, okay. He went and found another job and became super successful in something that he was more capable of doing. That honesty made a difference to Terry, and Terry went off and did really well what he ended up doing. So anyways, it was kind of interesting. Go ahead.
I think from a lesson we had earlier in the year, I think that's got to be the more healthy way to go about it, right? Is just to have those heart-to-hearts and say, you know what, your heart's not in this, or you just don't have, you're not showing what it takes to do this. Are you sure this is where you want to be? Because if you don't get your heart in this and step up, this is going to be a long, ugly road. And, you know, it looks bad. It looks bad to be fired.
Yeah, it put a lot of that onus on to Terry to actually go out and say, you know what, I understand it's not working. He had to have, I have to think that most people realize to some extent that they're struggling, they're not making a difference. In this case, he realized where he was at and went and found something that made himself successful. So it was good. It was probably a really tough conversation that she did, but she was honest, and she didn't belittle him or anything, but he went on and found another way. So it was good. The Phil side, that was a bummer deal. Gave him a new spot and he just dies from his brain cancer. But guess that's the way it goes.
You do.
Yep. Okay. Any other things we want to cover on that? We can kind of transition to what we can't talk about our previous doohickey, but we can kind of roll into what we want to kind of divvy up for this next one. Because I have to go rescue a kid. I can't do an 1.5-hour call tonight. My wife.
Tina, do you have any thoughts since you're going to be the group leader?
I was gonna say, let me pull up that email real quick that I sent out with the list of things. Did you ever get the new ones, or the one from this last week sent back to her, Michael? Did you get that email?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so we only have to do the we only have to do 4 topics this week versus, the 2 weeks worth of topics instead of the 3 weeks worth of topics. So we have layoffs, dismissing employees, workspace, society, and the workplace. Those are going to be our 4 topics. So it's a 6 to 8 page paper instead of being a longer one. And I re-clarified that with her because that's not what the instructions say. But she said no, to go with what she told us in the original, that thing that she does online, the little video thing. So we have to come up with who's going to do our topics. We've got 2 major topics, the 4 resolutions for each of those, which is 8 resolutions. And then we need to come up with the big problem, like that we're going to stress over top of everything else. So, and I don't know how you guys want to work that part out, considering that it won't be quite the same that it's been. So,
I'm trying to think of a way to divvy it up.
because honestly, I don't know, like there is this stuff about the layoffs and the dismissing of employees, but part of it's been the fact that they just kind of do it at their will, which I don't know that there's been a plan put in place. So that's something that I think we definitely need to look at. And then the workspace, I was struggling with that one a little bit, looking at it.
That is a whole bunch of gender,
Whole different. Yeah,
religion.
you can do anything with workplace.
There's all sorts of stuff in that one. There's easily 4 topics inside of that one.
Okay. I just haven't read through the paperwork for next week yet, so.
Yeah, I read through it. It's you literally just kind of make up something that would be kind of cool to do, and then you stick it in there. Not like make it up, but
We get it.
yeah, more of the experimental side of HR.
Okay.
So I'm trying to think what my next week will look like.
Crazy.
I was gonna say I go back to work next week, so I go back to both jobs and kids and
Who's my next class?
So what is your expectations of having this thing done so you can be out the door and be off and do your stuff? Like, you
Well,
probably
normally-
want to be.
I
Go
can
ahead.
still try to do some things on Thursday and Friday. I just don't know how much access I will have since I will be in Idaho. I still working on where we're Huh?
They have internet up there.
Yep, I can testify
I
to
can't-
that.
Yeah, I just don't know where I'll be and what'll be happening, and
I don't
like
either.
I said, it's gonna be
I think-
crazy.
I think we should have a goal to have it done by the time you head out, like Wednesday night, so you can turn it in. Just
Do you leave
That would
next
be great.
Wednesday, or do you leave the following Wednesday?
the
Following Wednesday.
the last
So if
Wednesday.
we
we
can
did.
have a goal to have it done by next week.
I would like to have it pretty much done by next Friday or so, and then you can kind of do your thing and then be able to turn it in by that following Wednesday before you go up. So like in a week
That
and
would-
a half.
That would be great, and that would follow the normal process that we've had of getting it to that point.
Yeah.
We'd just be a little bit ahead, but that's okay. We don't have as much to cover, so.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm still trying to think, like, do you just want to do 2 people do the topics and then 2 people kind of lead? Do we want to do like one person does the introduction and then
The
Like-
summary builds it.
yeah, so like builds it and then does one of the solutions and then one person does 3 of the solutions? I'm trying to keep it fair, but at the same time, we're splitting something in a 4.
Yeah, it's making it a little more difficult this time. I mean, and I don't mind doing whatever I need to do to make the paperwork. You guys have all done your parts. I didn't realize that this one was going to be shorter.
Which is awesome. So it is.
It's
Yeah.
nice. I mean, for all of us, it's nice, but I feel a little bad. I feel like I need to take a heavier hand in this one.
Yeah, but don't feel bad. We'll figure it out.
So,
So we're gonna do the workspace, and then what the other topic? You want to do layoffs, or what's the other topic?
So those will
Well,
be
it
the
was-
2 main topics: the workplace and society, and then layoffs and dismissing.
So
Yeah.
can we kind of combine those in there together? Workplace and society, space and
Yeah.
society.
So you could do 2 on workplace and then 2 on society, and then you could do 2 on dismissing and 2 on firing.
That's the only way we could kind of break some of the stuff down, is if that's what we're gonna do.
But then we
Because
leave ourselves without the kind of summary person.
well, I can still do that.
Well, I don't want you to do it for 3 sections though, because you still have to do the introduction. You still have to do. You'd have to do the summaries of 2 parts. Then you have to do your conclusion, and then you'd have to do a paper conclusion. That's quite a bit to write.
Okay.
I can do the introduction for workplace and society, and then I can do, I don't know, let's just say, wait, I'm seeing this.
I can see your wheels spinning.
And then, is it harder to write the introductions, or is it harder to write the solutions?
I would say that from what I've heard from some of you guys, it's hard for you to come up with solutions.
That's true. So what we can do is we can have 2 people do introductions, and then a solution, and then the third person will have to do.
3 solutions.
Wait.
How about if I volunteer to do terminations and dismissal, whatever it is?
Just as a total?
I just the whole thing, the kind of this, just like I've been doing in the past with the sections.
Okay.
And then
Jeff will split up workplace and society. I feel like Eric's is better with like the law type stuff too, to be honest.
Maybe Eric.
Policy type stuff.
that's because I'm mean and nasty.
That's because you have experience with it.
I was gonna say, I think a lot of it has to do with your experience.
So does that
I'm
mean
a
we're gonna?
millennial, so I want to make sure that we have avocados in every room. With workplace and society.
So if we put these together, is Erica gonna? I mean, sorry, Erica. I don't even know where I'm going. Different class. Sorry, Erica. I wasn't making you a female, but I was. Christina, are you gonna do the main issue?
Yeah, I can do the main issue.
And then, Jeff, do you want to do, I think the best way to write this up would be, do you want to do 3 solutions or do you want to do the introduction and a solution?
I can do 3 solutions, easy.
Okay, and I'll do introduction and solution.
Okay.
So I'll try and get my introduction probably by, I'd say Wednesday, just so then you can kind of see what I'm going off of. But introductions are pretty easy to fix and change. But I'm hoping to get it done this weekend, to be honest, because I'm going to be away, which means conference weekend, and Saturdays I usually don't watch conference. So.
Do what?
Wait. I'm sorry. I'll have it in the background while I'm reading the doohickey and I'm writing the paper, because I'm a college student and I don't have time for 8 hours of church.
Oh, come on now. You don't have a whole list of things you've been praying about and wondering about going to conference on Saturday to get the answers to
GRE that I need to study for, this test that I need to study for, this class that I need to finish, and this test.
and conference will be taped. You can go back and watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's be real, everyone learns more when they actually go back and read them. I personally do.
I get more out of it the second time, but I normally have something that I'm doing with me while I sit through conference, because otherwise I can't stay awake. And so I find something, whether I'm cutting something out or.
I don't know if y'all have ever gotten those adult coloring books, but they're amazing. Like that might sound
so now, real quick,
of me, but man,
that sounded millennial out the eye.
My mom bought us all. I have 3 older brothers, and my mom bought us all of them for Christmas, and it's amazing. I'll just be in class, and I'll just start filling in these like little squares, and I'm fully concentrated.
Yep.
Can I send you a box of colored pencils?
I have colored pencils. I have colored markers. I have Sharpies.
Okay, so the other thing, guys, did you see that you can go ahead and access the final?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's gonna be.
I just wanted.
Netflix.
Like, I know y'all are adults, and I'm a king of procrastination. We have 3 weeks left of school. If you do one of the 3 set of questions, it's only gonna be. It's so much easier to do it.
You got it.
I'm hoping to have it all done by this weekend.
You're one of those people.
Well, no, because I'm looking at I have work in the next 2 weeks, so.
I'm going to watch conference this weekend. Just
My
so
only
you guys
frustration
know.
is that if I'm understanding this right, the final is in a quiz form.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But does she give us the questions before though?
She's already given them to us.
Okay, good. I saw that she gave us the reading. I wasn't sure if she gave us the question. Because I don't know quiz, but then I spend the readings working on that quiz because it blocks you from any other notifications.
Yeah, she told you to put it in a Word document, so answer the questions in the Word document, and then what you do, like this is what I do with my other classes, is you cut and paste or copy and paste, and it's really simple to do it that way.
Sounds good then.
Okay.
So,
anything else?
Next Thursday, last meeting.
And next week I am the leader, correct?
Yep. All right.
Very good. Well, we will see you guys next Thursday night.
Yeah, try and get your doohickeys done.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Later.
Yep.
All right.